In the autumn of 1887, a letter crossed the Channel to a coroner's house in northeast London. The envelope bore a German stamp and the signature of a woman no archive has ever found. From that unverified sheet of paper grew the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. William Wynne Westcott, William Robert Woodman, and Samuel Liddell Mathers were respectable men in an age that prized respectability. All three belonged to the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, a small Rosicrucian study group open only to master masons. They read grimoires, copied sigils, and debated whether the soul could be mapped like a cathedral floor plan. They had outgrown the symbolic lectures of their Rosicrucian circle. They wanted a living system. The turning point was the Cipher Manuscript. Westcott claimed he bought a bundle of old papers from a clergyman's estate. Inside, written in a 17th century code, were outlines of rituals, grade structures, and a contact name. Sapiens dominabitur astris, Latin for "the wise shall rule the stars." Decoding it took months. Look. At the bottom of one page appeared the address of Fräulein Anna Sprengel, supposedly a high adept in Nuremberg. Letters were exchanged. Sprengel, if she lived, granted Westcott charter to found an English temple. The Isis Urania Temple opened its doors on the 1st of March 1888 in a rented room above a coal merchant in Fitzroy Street, London. Historians, most notably Elik Howe in his 1972 documentary History, have searched German records and found no trace of Sprengel or her lodge, Die Goldene Dämmerung. The simplest reading is that Westcott, or someone close to him, wrote the letters himself. The manuscript itself survives, the code is real, the content coherent, but the origin story remains a deliberate ambiguity. The order never needed absolute proof, only the aura of antiquity. By 1896, the order counted 315 initiates across 5 temples, roughly 1/3 women, an openness almost unheard of in Victorian esoteric circles. The temples were Isis Urania in London, Osiris in Weston-super-Mare, Horus in Bradford, Amun-Ra in Edinburgh, and Ahathor in Paris. Each operated semi-autonomously, linked by correspondence and shared ritual texts. The Golden Dawn was not a debating society, it was a school. Entry began with the neophyte 0-0 ritual, blindfold, rope, sword point at the breast, oath of secrecy. From there, 10 grades mapped onto the Kabbalistic tree of life. The outer order, called the First Order, comprised 5 grades. Dardosu Neophyte 110, Zelator 2 to 99, Theoricus 2 to 8, Practicus 4 to 7, Philosophus. The Inner Order, Rosae Rubeae et Aureae Crucis, began at 5-6 Adeptus Minor, followed by Adeptus Major and Adeptus Exemptus. The final 3 grades, Magister Templi, Magus, Ipsissimus, were said to belong to the invisible secret chiefs. Each grade carried a syllabus: Hebrew letters, planetary correspondences, tarot trumps, geomantic figures, alchemical processes. Members kept flying rolls, handwritten lecture notes, on everything from the correct banishing pentagram to the vibrational names of Egyptian deities. Mathers supplied most of the ritual texts. He translated the Clavicular Salomonis, edited the Sacred Book of Abramelin, and devised ceremonies that blended Renaissance magic with Victorian theatricality. Robes were color-coded by grade. The vault of the Adepti was a 7-sided chamber painted with Rosicrucian symbols, rose-cross ceiling, pastel walls, pillars of black and white. Magic, in Golden Dawn terms, was the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. It was not stage illusion. It was willed alignment of the microcosm, the magician, with the macrocosm, the universe. The ultimate aim was knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, an inner divine intelligence. Daily practice included the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, 5 minutes, 4 directions, Hebrew names. Advanced students built astral temples in imagination, invoked planetary spirits, and kept dream diaries. The Inner Order introduced talismans, evocation to visible appearance in a triangle, and the Enochian system of John Dee. Mathers claimed direct contact with the secret chiefs. Others suspected he invented them to maintain authority. William Butler Yeats joined in 1890 at age 24, still raw from a broken romance with Maud Gonne. He rose quickly, became imperator of the Amen-Ra Temple in Edinburgh, and used the Order's symbolism in poems like The Two Trees. His automatic script experiments with his wife Georgie after 1917 owe much to Golden Dawn's scrying techniques. Together they timed conceptions by Alan Leo's 1001 Notable Nativities, hoping to draw down an avatar. Their son Michael grew up to sit in the Irish Senate. Politics, it turned out, was the closest thing to Messiah they managed. Florence Farr, actress, director, friend of Shaw and Wilde, served as premonstrator, teaching voice resonance and the vibratory formulas of God names. Annie Horniman, heiress to the Horniman tea fortune, bankrolled the order until Mather's autocratic style soured the arrangement. Aleister Crowley entered in 1898. Within 18 months, he demanded the Inner Order. London refused. Mathers in Paris admitted him anyway. The resulting schism is still called the Revolt of the Adepti. Crowley was a Cambridge dropout, mountaineer, poet, and self-proclaimed wickedest man alive. His Golden Dawn stint ended in exile, but he remixed its teachings into Thelema. In Moonchild, 1917, he fictionalized breeding a super baby, warding off rivals like in a magical Home Alone. Real life? His attempts flopped, but inspired Jack Parsons, pre-NASA rocketeer, and L. Ron Hubbard's goddess incarnation ritual in the 1940s. Echoes persist in modern Thelemic orders. Dion Fortune, post-Golden Dawn, wrote novels like Psychic Self-Defense Warning of Evolutionary Clearing, Nature's Quiet Removal of the Weak. Algernon Blackwood's The Bright Messenger, 1921, features a child born of a botched sex magic rite meant to evolve humanity. Mathers was the showman. Egyptian headdresses, translated grimoires, a Highland title he awarded himself, Count MacGregor of Glenstray. His wife, Moyna, sister to philosopher Henri Bergson, ran Alpha et Omega after his death in 1918. The scandals began early. In 1896, Annie Horniman discovered Mathers was living on her allowance while claiming poverty. She cut him off, and the Paris temple nearly folded. The same year, Dr. Edward Berridge, Frater Resurgam, was quietly expelled after allegations that he used hypnotic suggestion on female initiates during healing sessions that left the women shaken and the men furious. Berridge sued for libel. The case settled out of court, but the whispers followed him. Then came the Horus Hor affair. In 1897, a young woman calling herself Madame Horos arrived in London claiming to be Mathers' emissary from the secret chiefs. She and her husband Theo set up a rival temple, initiated wealthy seekers, and were soon accused of defrauding them. Then, of far worse. At their 1901 trial in the Old Bailey, it emerged that the couple had staged mock marriages, drugged initiates with chloroform, and performed sexual rites in the name of the Golden Dawn. Madame Horos was sentenced to 7 years for rape. Her husband got 15. The press feasted. "Black magic in Bloomsbury," screamed the headlines. Mathers denied all connection and threatened to sue the newspapers. He never did. Crowley, meanwhile, had begun publishing the Order's secrets in the Equinox. In 1910, he printed the full Adeptus Minor ritual, oath-bound material, complete with diagrams of the vault. London adepts were horrified. Some resigned on the spot. Mathers obtained an injunction, but the damage was done. The rituals were now in print, and the aura of exclusivity evaporated. On the 19th of April 1900, Crowley arrived at 36 Blythe Road, Hammersmith, wearing Highland dress and an Osiris mask. Yeats and 2 allies met him on the stairs. Words were exchanged, some say magical formulae, others simple insults. Crowley left without the vault keys. The temple sued for trespass and won £12 in damages, enough for 2 years' rent. The fracture was irreversible. Splinters formed. A. E. Waite's Christian Mystical Independent and Rectified Rite. Dissolved, 1915. Robert Felkin's Stella Matutina survived in New Zealand until 1978. Mather's Alpha et Omega closed in the 1930s. By 1903, the original order was legally and spiritually defunct. Israel Regardie, Crowley's secretary in the 1920s, published the full rituals in 4 volumes between 1937 and 1940. He believed secrecy had become a liability. The teachings should outlive the egos. His books remain the standard reference. The system proved durable. Wicca's circle casting, elemental quarters, and 3-degree system derived directly from Golden Dawn forms. Gerald Gardner was initiated into a surviving Crotona Fellowship Lodge that traced lineage to the order. Modern ceremonial magic, whether solitary or in groups like the OTO, uses the same banishing rituals and grade structure. Justin Robert Dawes' The Thelemic and Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is one of dozens of contemporary curricula that blend Mather's system with Crowley's Thelema. Although the Golden Dawn itself fractured, its ideas slipped into the bloodstream of modern culture, quietly, steadily, and often invisibly. What had once been taught in small rented rooms in London now echoes across bookshelves, record sleeves, comic panels, and movie screens. In literature, one of the clearest roots was Arthur Machen. A member in the 1890s, he wove the order's atmosphere of hidden worlds into fiction, like the great god Pan and the 3 impostors. His blend of pagan dread and psychological unease influenced H.P. Lovecraft directly, and through him, the entire lineage of cosmic horror. Stephen King has acknowledged Machen as part of the ancestral DNA of modern supernatural fiction. Algernon Blackwood echoed the order's interest in elemental forces and heightened perception in his ghost stories, while Edith Nesbit folded esoteric symbolism into children's fantasy with a gentler hand. Even writers a bit more outside the occult, like Tolkien, absorbed indirect Victorian mystical frameworks that had been shaped by the cultural wake of the order. Music carried the Golden Dawn into the public eye in more flamboyant ways. Jimmy Page's fascination with ceremonial magic left its traces on Led Zeppelin lore and artwork. David Bowie's Quicksand refers to the Golden Dawn by name, part of his lifelong dance between mysticism and identity. And the Beatles, placing Crowley on the Sgt. Pepper's cover, turned him into a pop culture icon, an emblem of breaking boundaries and exploring altered states. In visual art, Pamela Coleman Smith wasn't the only bridge. Moina Mather's ritual costumes and visionary stage pieces helped shape the look of mystical art in the early 20th century, blending Egyptian revival aesthetics with geometric color symbolism that would influence later esoteric artists. The order introduced a way of thinking about magical space as structured, ordered, and architecturally symbolic, a template modern occult art still uses. Film, television, and comics have built entire universes from Golden Dawn concepts without always naming the source. The idea of a mystical order with grades, sigils, and an esoteric syllabus appears everywhere, from supernatural dramas to big-budget fantasy. Comics like Mike Mignola's Hellboy draw heavily on Victorian occult imagery. Modern video games routinely use tarot archetypes, planetary correspondences, and structured magical skill trees, a distant echo of the Order's graded initiations. The Bene Gesserit breeding program in Dune mirrors the Order's eugenic speculations. The astral projection scenes in Doctor Strange, 2016, are textbook Golden Dawn scrying. The tarot deck used by Rachel Weisz in The Mummy, 1999, is the Rider-Waite, designed by Order member Arthur Edward Waite. Even the phrase "do what thou wilt" on a t-shirt at a music festival traces back, through Crowley, to the Golden Dawn's emphasis on true will. The Order wanted to systematize ancient wisdom. What it produced instead was a symbolic toolkit, a vocabulary of magic, psychology, and ritual that artists and storytellers continue to borrow from. Its temples may be long gone, but its imagination never left the culture. The Order was elitist. It spoke of evolution in language that today reads as eugenic. It was also progressive. Women held office, lectures were open to all classes, and the curriculum treated magic as a science of consciousness. Its greatest legacy may be methodological. It gave the West a teachable, graded system of esoteric practice that could be studied like piano scales. That system is still in use, adapted by psychologists, artists, and solitary seekers who never join a lodge. 15 years from charter to collapse. No miracles, no political revolution, no verifiable contact with secret chiefs. What it did produce was a curriculum, a mythology, and a set of questions about human potential that refuse to stay buried. If you walk past certain quiet buildings in London, Edinburgh, or Bristol, you may stand on ground where adepts once drew pentagrams in chalk. The chalk is gone. The questions remain. If any of this stayed with you, perhaps the image of a masked Crowley on a Hammersmith staircase, or the quiet persistence of a pentagram drawn in chalk, leave a comment below. Which figure or scandal surprised you most? And if you'd like more of these measured walks through hidden history, consider subscribing. A single click keeps the candle burning.